Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the Millennial Business Podcast. I am so excited to be joined today by my beautiful friend Bec. We became internet friends. We both live in Canberra. We have been sort of following each other for quite a while now on Instagram and been friends on Facebook and stuff, but never really had the opportunity to dive into each other's stories and really have a good chat. So Bec, I'm so excited. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
So great to be here.
Yes, I'm very excited because I actually don't really know that much about sort of your story. I see everything you're doing. I see your coaching. I see the amazing things that you're doing with the women here in Canberra and the spiritual community here in Canberra. How did you actually get the idea to first go with the candles even to begin with?
That's such a good question. I think it's a little bit of both, I suppose, like learning along the way, but something that when I reflect back on, I've probably done a lot of throughout my life. Yeah. So how did I start doing the candles? I was actually studying interior design at the time. So I was working full time. I was studying interior design at night. Wow. And I just wanted to start creating candles. It was just a little passion hobby. Let's make some candles for our home. Let's make some candles for our friends. And I remember my husband at the time being like, and we weren't married then, but he was like, maybe you should finish your interior design course before you start this new thing. And I was like, no, it'll be fine. Let's just see where it goes. Right. And so that's how it started. And then because I'm in, I was already in this space, I'd done my Reiki training. I had friends in the community who were like, I'd love some candles that you've made with that energy. And so that's how I started actually selling them. Yeah.
Cool. I love that because, and I think so many people, as I just mentioned, wouldn't listen to that little voice that said, no, actually, I don't want to finish my interior design before I start this other side hustle. Like they would finish that thing and then potentially do it. So I think it's so important when you are sort of trying to figure out what you want to do in life, particularly if you feel like you haven't sort of figured out your purpose or your passion or what you truly want to do. It's important to, if you have a thought that's scary or you think, oh no, I probably shouldn't do that. Anything that I feel like I shouldn't do because someone else has placed an expectation on myself or I've placed an expectation on myself, I'm like, no, I really need to do that. Just because I think that I shouldn't, to try and break through that limiting belief.
Yes, exactly right. Like follow the fear. It's like, oh, that's a bit scary.
Yeah.
Because that's where all the growth happens, right? Like we can't grow if we're not pushing ourselves outside our comfort zone, and being outside our comfort zone is uncomfortable and scary.
Yeah. For sure. I totally agree. And for me, it's helped me so much in my life to do things that scared me, like starting my own business, moving to Bali. Moving to Bali was like the most terrifying thing I've ever done because I still lived at home. My parents still paid my phone bill. I didn't have to pay for food. Like I was such a little sheltered child in my cocoon, and then I just moved to Bali with like $500 in my bank account, and I was like, I'm just gonna make it work. And just
and you did.
I figured it out. Exactly. And it was the most rewarding thing. Like now I feel like Bali is my happy place, and I'm so I'm back in Australia for COVID now, but I cannot wait to get back because it's just lights my soul on fire. It makes me so happy. And if I never took that leap of faith and I never stepped into the fear, then I never would have found that for myself. So I think it's so important for people as well to really yes, it's scary, but the reward that you're going to get from stepping into the fear, you might have been scared or sounds like you weren't scared to start your candle business, but the thought of doing it all at once maybe was a little bit stressful, or whatever it is, maybe starting your coaching was a little bit scary, but you stepped into it and now you're living in your purpose and you found your calling, which is absolutely amazing. And not many people actually get to experience that in their life. Not many people find their callings. I'm
hopefully more do.
Yes, hopefully I know this. I feel like we're both on the same mission because we just want to help people figure out what their calling is. But was there a certain point in your journey where you felt like, okay, this is what I was put on this earth to do. This is what I'm here to do? Or was it sort of like a gradual thing that you figured out?
I think, and this is probably where the fear comes in and the self-doubt comes in, because I think when I started running those workshops, I wasn't life coaching, and that was like a thing that I would never do, like, oh, I'm not a life coach, I can't do that, but I'm running these women's empowerment workshops. And I think at that point, that was when I was like, I love this. I love this work. This is what I'm here to do. But there was that fear and that self-doubt, particularly being a young woman, which was like, who am I to then go and be a life coach and coach people to find their purpose and live their dreams, right? Like, who am I to do that?
Yeah.
And it was the gradual thing that once I started it and I got some training behind me and I got some clients and I started to see the results and build my community and all of that, that I now, I don't quite know when it happened, but I definitely feel a lot more comfortable in that space.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that's an important, well, not an important thing, but that's something that you did really well, was sort of build it up over time. And especially, like, I know your community that you have here in Canberra and even online in your Facebook group, they're so active, they're so invested, they love the content that you're sharing because you show up consistently and you're always providing value and sort of giving them information or tools or strategies or anything that's to do with your brand. You're constantly showing up and giving them that support and guidance, which I think is so important as well for other people who have brands. If maybe you are struggling to find clients, or maybe you are like unsure if this is what you're actually supposed to do or not, look at how you're showing up online. Do you have any sort of strategy or anything around like how you do show up online, or was it just something that came so naturally to you that it just felt normal that, okay, this is what I need to be doing sort of on a weekly basis?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying that, because I absolutely love the community that I've built, both, coming through my in-person stuff and my online work. When it comes to like the Facebook group, that started naturally. I feel like this is how everything happens in my business. That was a group that originally started as a flow on from the workshops and events that I run, because it was like, well, this is how we stay connected in between.
Yeah.
And for a long time, nothing happened really in there. It was kind of just very ad hoc. And then once I decided to start my one-on-one work, then I started being more strategic. And I do remember kind of coming up with a plan at the time that I would show up there every week, doing like Facebook lives and sharing consistent content. I now don't go live every week, and but at that time, I think because I had that strategy initially where it was like, I'm going to just show up, and I'm going to share, and this is what I'm going to do. Because I had that strategy, the community kind of has those foundations now, and I can really just show up. I mean, I still show up consistently and we have regular posts and things like that, but I don't have to go live every week in order to keep that community really thriving. And now I share that space with other women and other spiritual leaders in the community and stuff like that. So it's kind of happened organically, but also there was a point where I went, no, I need to double down on this, and I need to just consistently show up. And that's been the key. I think consistency is the word you used, and that is so important. And that is one of the things that I think makes or breaks a business, being consistent and showing up and sharing value that is going to help the people in your community, and share with them from your heart and be really authentic. People can see that and people know that, right? Like, it's just so important. But being there consistently is the thing that really made the difference, I think, for me.
Yeah, I love that. And you've recently you mentioned that since COVID has happened, you've dived into a little bit of business coaching with other people who have spiritual businesses. How did you get into that? Like, how did that come about? Because I'm super interested in that.
Yeah, so it's definitely something I've dabbled in. So over the last few years of coaching, a lot of the women, and this is what's really interesting, right? A lot of the women that have come through my workshops and my one-on-one life coaching have found their purpose and then started their own business, right? And they were like, Bec, I want to learn from you how you've done this. Can I do business coaching with you? So I've done a little bit of it prior to COVID.
Yeah.
One of the things I saw in my community, and because of that, a lot of the women in my online Facebook group and in my community generally are business owners, but I've never necessarily worked with them in that way.
Yeah.
One of the things I saw is that a lot of spiritual businesses who have in-person presences were going, what do I do now? Like, how do I do healings online? How do I run circles online? How do I run meditations online? And I put the word out and I was like, look, does anyone need some help in this space? I could probably put together something.
Yeah.
And so I did a couple of free Facebook Lives and things like that, but I put together a really short 3-week program, and now I'm running a longer 4-month program. And yeah, it kind of happened because I knew there was a need for it in the community. And I went, well, I've got something to share here because I've built a spiritual online business and I can help you do the same.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's such an important thing as a young person. We understand technology a lot better. It's so natural for us. Whereas I think a lot of the people, well, I'm not 100% sure, but I think I've noticed a little bit that the people in your community are a little bit older women who are sort of in that spiritual community here in Canberra or online. So for them, when COVID hit, they were probably just freaking out and thinking, oh my God, what do I do? So the fact that you could see that need and then help them with that is amazing. And I think that is a vital part in business, is to, in anything that you do, in any area, in any industry, if you see a need, figure out how you can serve those people and how you can fix that problem. Because that's the foundation of business, right? So if you are struggling to sort of get clients or whatever it is, maybe you're not talking to their pain points enough, or maybe you're not listening to what their true needs actually are, and that's why the stuff you're doing online isn't resonating with them. So it's sort of good to have that in mind with anything that you're doing, in your business. I would love to now dive into a little bit more around sort of figuring out life purpose, because this is something that I know a lot of my audience have businesses, but I think the thing with business is a lot of the time people start the business with the intention to make money, but then realize once they've started the business, they either have just pretty much created a full-time job for themselves, or they're not super passionate about what they're doing because it's not actually in alignment with what they want to do and their true like calling or purpose. You mentioned that you help your clients with finding their purpose and really what they're passionate about and what their calling is. Is there any sort of process that you take your clients through to figure that out, or how do you go about helping them with that?
Yeah, I suppose there's a couple of different things that you can do. And I think sometimes it's just about getting really serious about what your heart is called to do, right? And connecting in with that. So the first thing we do is learn how to drop in and connect with our heart and our soul, because we spend so much time up in here in our head. And this is where the ego voice lives, and this is where all of those self-doubts and those fears come up. But when we drop into our heart, that's when we can connect in with our purpose and our higher calling, right? Mm-hmm. So the way that I work with my clients to do that is really, mainly we do stuff around how it's going to work for them, and it's always tailored specifically to different people. But really things like journaling, meditation, like going back to spiritual practices is how I like to work with my clients, because my clientele are spiritual people, so I know that works for them. Yeah. And working out how they can start to quieten the mind and just start to follow those things that they can feel in their heart. Feeling is really, really part of it. And for me, it's also about doing a lot of work on self-worth, because often what's blocking us from following those things is not feeling worthy of that life, right? And not feeling worthy of living our dreams, and not feeling worthy. And often this is what I always find with people, you know, often it'll come out randomly in a conversation. Like I remember talking with a client once and she was like, I just don't know what I'm passionate about. I just don't have any interest. I just don't. And I was like, I don't know if I believe that. But as we were talking, I found out that she was really passionate about exercise and going to her gym, and she dreamed, right, of becoming a personal trainer, but she couldn't do that because she wasn't the right body type for that. She was too old for that, all of this sort of stuff. And I was like, but you're really excited about it. And you just told me you're not passionate about anything. And I can see in this conversation that you're really excited about this thing. So often it's about getting out of our own head and going, actually, this is what I really love. Like, what lights you up? What do you get excited about, you know, doing and talking and sharing with your friends and family? That thing is the thing that you've got to follow, that feeling. Follow the happiness.
I love that. Yeah, it's funny because actually over the weekend, my business partner and I, so we have recently decided with our agency, we own a marketing agency together. We've recently decided where it's doing super well. We're making good money with it and everything. And so we've decided, okay, now we're going to start focusing more on our personal brands. And we were having a conversation around like, why haven't we been focusing on our personal brands in the past? Why do we feel like we can't make money with our personal brands and we have to make money doing something that we're not super, like, yes, we both love digital marketing and content creation and all that sort of stuff. But what we're not actually focusing on what we're super passionate about and what we feel like our calling is. And when we really dove down into it and like got to the nitty gritty, we both realized that it's because we feel like we're not worthy to, we had different reasons, but basically my one was, I feel like I'm not worthy to receive lots of money for doing what I actually love. And I have a limiting belief that if I want to earn good money, I have to work hard and I have to do something that I don't really love doing to be able to make money, and then do what I love doing just on the side as like a passion project.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Yeah. So, and I think it's part of what we've been taught sort of as society, that like you can't really do what you love and get paid for it. You have to work for the 9 to 5 and blah, blah, blah. But it was interesting sort of just having this conversation and unraveling, even though like we sort of, both of us don't really live in society's expectations already. Like we both moved to Bali. We run our digital marketing agency from like remotely from around the world. She's in Belgium right now. I'm in Australia. Like already sort of going against the grain, but we still have these limiting beliefs that we can't do what we're passionate about because we're not worthy, and we can't earn good money doing something we love. Yeah. And it affects everyone, even like people who are working their 9 to 5, it affects them. It affects us who we're running like 6-figure digital marketing agency. It's like, it's crazy. It affects absolutely everyone. And I love that you bring everything back to your self-worth, because a lot of the time, if people haven't done coaching before or haven't necessarily dived into personal development, they don't even know how to recognize that they feel like they're not worthy. Because it's just something that's been ingrained in them since forever. That's all they've known. How can people start to sort of unwind this and recognize that they maybe have some self-worth issues? Is there any sort of signs that they should look for? Is there like an exercise that people can do, or how do you get people to figure that out?
Yeah, so I think normally it comes up when people want to do something and they feel like there's a block there and they don't know why they can't do it, and they want to work out what that is. I mean, I think I'm a big advocate of having a coach. I've got my own coach, you know, and I think often having somebody to bounce those thoughts off can be really helpful, right? Because it can be at that point when someone goes, you're playing that story over and over again, and you need to stop playing that story, because that's what's stopping you from getting from here to here. The way that I teach this for, you know, to do this yourself, you know, it's about, first of all, it's about awareness. You've got to know what those thoughts are. You've got to know what those limiting beliefs are. You've got to identify them in order to catch them in the moment.
Yeah.
And so it's about just starting to notice. So when you're moving about your day, you know, what do you what are those thoughts that are playing in your head that are stopping you from doing certain things that you might want to do? And they can be as really simple as like, oh, I can't have that donut today, you know? And it's like, and the thought process around like why you have to limit yourself from not enjoying something, you know, what is the thing that's actually stopping you there? Sometimes it's about health and wellness, but other times it can be like, oh, I'm not allowed to enjoy something in my day, you know?
Yeah.
And starting to just take notice of those little things, and even asking other people in your life to tell you, though, you know, when they notice you playing those stories out. So, you know, we do it all the time, like, oh, I can't possibly do that, or you know, that's not me, this is my story. You know, we have those things that we tell ourselves over and over again. What's really interesting is you were talking about how you know, it doesn't matter who you are, everyone has this. Mindset work and soul level, you know, healing is something that goes on forever. Like, it's a journey we're on. Yeah. And every time you want to do something new in business, or every time, you want to start focusing in a different area, you're like, oh my God, again? I have to do this shit again? Like, oh, you know, and so it's something that you can't just see it as like, I do this once and then it's an end point. It's just something that we continue to work on. It gets easier though.
Yes.
Because you start noticing it and picking it up. So once you know those things, once you can identify that, you know, the thought is, you know, I'm not young enough to do that, or I'm not fit enough to do that, or I'm not old enough to do that, right? I've had that one a lot. Like, I'm too young for this. I can't possibly have this kind of experience, so I can't do X, Y, and Z. Once you know what they are, it's then about catching them. So there's 3 steps. It's catch, witness, and then choose again. So you have to catch it in the moment, which is the thing that gets easier with practice. So you're catching it, and then instead of believing that to be true, it's about stepping outside as the observer and being like, oh, I'm having this belief that this is my truth, that I'm not worthy of this thing. And when you step outside of your thoughts and you witness and you observe them, you're not as in it, right? Like, it's not as true for you. And so then you can choose a new thought that's more supportive, and you can actually go like, I'm going to choose that I'm worthy of this thing, and tell myself that, instead of replaying that story over and over again.
Yeah.
And basically what you're doing is rewiring your brain. And it gets easier, and the more we do it, the less we have to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one way, a great way you said to catch it to begin with, and you have to catch it in the moment, but I know that can be really hard, because I had a lot of limiting beliefs for a very long time. And when I really got into a lot of personal development, when I moved to Bali, I was working with a coach, and I couldn't catch these things in the moment. And so what he actually got me to do was to sit down and write down, first of all, what are my persistent complaints, concerns, and critiques? Like, what are the things that come up for me every day that I'm complaining about, that I'm critiquing about myself or others, and that I'm concerned about? And so once I wrote it down, then when I had the thought in the moment to catch, it was easier to catch it, because I'm like, oh, that's a thought that I wrote down in my list. And now I can choose to reprogram that, or rethink it, or whatever you want to do. So also, just if you're having trouble catching it to begin with, I think it's a fantastic idea to sort of write a list to begin with, so that you know what thoughts to look out for when you are trying to reprogram your subconscious mind, because it's so hard to reprogram your subconscious. And like, it takes work, like daily work every day. I read affirmations all the time. I have them stuck up in front of my desk, and like, I read them right before I start working, and it's a constant thing. Like you said, it never ends. It's always going. So yeah, I think that's another great way that people can start to actually catch these limiting beliefs.
Yeah. And actually, so I really love that. What you can even do to take it a step further is, in another column next to those things, is write down what you're going to change it to. So, you know, so if the thought is, you know, like, I'm not skinny enough to wear that, for instance, it can be like, you know, you can be like, no, I'm going to choose that I am beautiful, you know, like you then replace that with something
Yes.
else. And if you've actually got it written,
Yeah.
it's just that thought, that reminder that you're like, oh, what was I going to replace that with?
Yeah, that makes it so much easier, because then you're not trying to think of what you're going to replace it with, like in the moment when you're feeling that shitty feeling. You've already like pre-planned. I love that. Yeah, I think that's a really good technique. Bec, thank you so much. This has been such a valuable episode. I feel like the strategies that we talked about are definitely like going to be so helpful for the audience to actually go out and implement, because literally for almost like half of the episode we talked about strategy, which is fantastic because it's my favorite thing to talk about, because then the audience can go out and implement these things in their lives. So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. If people want to find out more about you, more about your online community, follow you on Insta, where can they find you?
So they can find me on Instagram at Bec, bec.Cuzzillo, Cuzzillo. That's always a bit of a challenge. And my Facebook group on Facebook is the Sacred Goddess Collective. So you can come find us there and hang out.
Beautiful. And if you had one last thing that you could say to the audience today, maybe to do with finding their purpose or their calling in life, maybe 2 or 3 sentences, what would you say to the audience just to sum it all up?
To sum it all up, I would say just go for it. If you're feeling the fear, if you're feeling the self-doubt around something, but you are feeling super called to it, if it lights you up and makes you happy, please do it, because the world needs your magic and your medicine, and we need you to start shining your light, because there's no one else that can do it except you. And you're being called to it for a reason. So please, please, please just do it.
I love that. I absolutely love that, because someone else I interviewed on a podcast another time actually said, if you don't follow your passion or follow your dream, whatever it is in life, it could potentially stop somebody else from doing the same thing, because the way you share your message or the way you show up in the world obviously inspires other people to do it. So if you don't do it, you're also holding other people back from potentially following their dreams as well. So it's not even just about yourself, it's about how you're going to show up and serve other people so that everyone can live a more joyfully filled life. So yes. I absolutely love that. Bec, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Guys, until the next episode, we'll see you later. Bye.